Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Yeah, hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. We had fun at our Thanksgiving. I hope you did too. And, the Shabbat is kind of right in between Thanksgiving and Hanukkah. So what I want to talk with you about today kind of ties at least one of the common themes of Thanksgiving and Hanukkah together. But in order to enter into this message, I'm going to ask you to pretend something. Now, this is also a time when we get into pretending a little bit when we think of one of our favorite movies, It's a Wonderful Life, which plays at this time of year, right? Do you like that movie? It's a wonderful, it's a great flick. Forget about it. It's so good. Well, you'll remember that George Bailey, all of a sudden, he wished that he didn't exist, right? And the story goes on, and I won't say much more about it. You know the story. Well, today we're going to do a little pretending, too. Not that you don't exist, but here's what I'm going to ask you to pretend. Pretend, and it's going to take some effort, pretend you never heard of Yeshua. You had no idea who he was. You're from the planet Oog. And you're here on Earth, and you discover this book that talks about this person. And you knew that this person was kind of a big shot in this world, and you wanted to figure out what was going on, but you didn't know a thing. So I'm going to read two vignettes, two stories, one from our Torah portion today, and another from the portion that we would have read next Shabbat, but we're not going to because it's a holy day, and we disrupt the normal reading cycle with a special reading for the holiday. So, two vignettes, two stories from the life of this unknown person. You've never heard of him before, and when we're done, I'm going to ask you a question and tie everything together. So here we go. We've already heard this. Allegra and Michelle have read it to us, but I'm just going to review. So after 2 days, it says, or after 2 days after what? After 2 days of being with the Samaritans, you recall the Samaritan woman. We read about her in chapter 4 of the story of Yeshua, recorded by Yochanan. After 2 days, he left for the Galilee. So he was south, he was in Judah, and now he's heading for the Galilee, or he had been in Shomron, the middle area of the Samaritans, and now he's heading for the Galilee. Now, Yeshua himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country, and I think here it's a general statement, a reflection on how when he was in Jerusalem for Pesach, he wasn't universally widely accepted for who he was. We know all about that. So he says a prophet is honored all over the place, but not in his own, in this case, in Jerusalem. But the people of Galilee, it says, when he arrived at Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Pesach festival, for they also had been there. So he's back in the Galilee, and although a prophet is without honor, here in general the people in Galilee are receiving him well. We're again back in Washington, D.C. No. Okay? So you get that picture. Once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine, and that's a great account. And there was a certain royal official whose son was sick at Capernaum, or Capharnaum. And when this man heard that Yeshua had come to the Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Now remember, we're from the planet Oog. This is the first time we've ever read this. So what are we getting? Well, people must have thought this guy was special because here you had this boy who is sick. And those of you who are parents, and on Oog we have parents, you know that there's no pain as great as your own kid hurting. This is something that's universally understood. A normal parent will say, better me that I should suffer than my kid, right? Isn't that the way we are? Yeah, absolutely. And so you have this distraught synagogue official from Capharnaum, that is Capernaum, Yeshua's home base in the Galilee. And he begged him to come heal his son. Oh, it's interesting. Well, maybe he had done some healings and people had an expectation that he could do this. Oh, let's read on. Ugites. Okay. Oh, then Yeshua says, Unless you people see signs and wonders, Yeshua told them, you will never believe. Oh, all they're concerned about is fireworks. Okay. The royal official said, "Sir, come down before my child dies." So the kid was really, really sick. It was the end. Right? And he pleads with them, "Please, Yeshua." And here we are observing. We've never heard of Yeshua, but let's see what Yeshua does in light of this plaintive cry of a father, a distraught father, who is watching his son, who he loved so much, ever since he was born, And here's this kid, and his life is ebbing away. Let's see what Yeshua does. So, Yeshua said, "Your son will live." Okay, good. The man took Yeshua at his word, and he departed. And while he was on the way, his servants met him with the news that the boy was living. When he inquired at the time his son got better, they said it was yesterday at 1 p.m. The fever had left him. Okay, this is getting interesting here. Then the father realized that it was the exact time in which Yeshua had said to him, "Your son will live." And so he and his whole household began to trust that Yeshua was this special person. Now, again, from our planet, we don't know too much about theology, but what do we see here? We see a person who was recognized as powerful, and instead of being too busy, he goes. He doesn't even have to go. He just says he'll be better. And exactly at that time, the boy was healed. And this was the second sign that Yeshua performed after coming from Judea to the Galilee. So the first sign, had we been reading the book, the first sign, that was when he turned the water into wine, which is pretty cool. Water into wine, we know what those are. And that would have taken some real molecular changes there. So we're impressed with this guy so far. Okay, now we're moving on. This is next week, what would have been next week's portion, but it's not going to be the one we'll read, because again, it's Shabbat Chanukah. Sometime later, Yeshua went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now, there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool which in Aramaic is called Bethsaida. Bethsaida. We'll have to look in a dictionary what that means. Does anyone have a Hebrew dictionary? Oh, yeah. In the back of the spaceship, we got one. Okay. What's it say? Oh, it means house of mercy. Okay. A pool called a house of mercy. And here a great number of disabled people used to lie: the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. And we look in the encyclopedia and we find out a little more about this pool. And what recent scholarship suggests is that this pool, there were two pools that have been discovered by archaeologists in Israel. And the pool of Siloam, which was within the general precincts of the wall of Jerusalem, and then not too far away, but outside the immediate precincts, was this pool of Bethsaida. And what had been suggested is, there was never a pool like this. We've looked and looked and looked, and we have never found a pool like this, which was supposed to have 5 porticos, or 5 areas of columns. And we've been looking and looking and looking, and the archaeologists say we've been looking and looking, and we've never seen a pentagon-shaped, 5-sided thing like this, a pool like this. This must just be the imagination of the people who wrote this book. Interestingly enough, the pool has been discovered. And it's not a pentagon-shaped pool, but it turns out that it has 4 rows of columns, and then, right in the middle, a 5th. And that's how it was shaped. And they actually found this pool, which is très cool, I think. Okay. So, a great number of disabled people lie there. Now, I should tell you again, and this is a suggestion that some have made, and it's very provocative and actually affects our understanding of the story, that this pool was actually a pool not dedicated to the God of Israel, and not a place where the God of Israel was invoked to heal people, but rather, you got to realize in Jerusalem, because of Hellenism and because of the intrusion of Greek and Roman thinking and institutions, you had a pool dedicated to the pagan god of healing, a pagan god of healing. And I can get that for you. I tried to memorize it, but I couldn't quite maintain it in my medulla oblongata. So I'm just going to tell you what it is. Oh, yes. It's Asclepius, the god of mercy and healing in the Roman pantheon. And so this pool apparently was dedicated to this god. And how do we know that? Because over the exact spot where the pool was, but several centuries later, there was another one of these healing shrines to this pagan god. And so the suggestion is made that that was what was happening here, that this was a shrine, a place where sick people would go, but it wasn't dedicated to the God of Israel. And that affects the coloration and some of the meaning of what we're going to be reading about. Okay, so it mentions here the Bethsaida, which was covered by 5 covered colonnades. We talked about that. And here a great number of disabled people used to come and lie, the lame and the paralyzed. Now that is a touching scene. And here you have these people who would show up there hoping that by going into the water, they would be healed. Now one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. And when Yeshua saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him a rather rhetorical question, "Do you want to be made well?" And it is a rhetorical question because obviously that's what he would have wanted. That's why he was there. But Yeshua wanted him to say it. "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me get into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes on ahead of me." Now, in some of the later manuscripts in your Bible, you will have read about because an angel of the Lord comes and stirs the water. It is not part of the original manuscripts. It's not part of the best manuscript tradition. It was an added little gloss. Someone tried to, scribes didn't change things a lot in the text of the Bible, but sometimes they added editorial comments to kind of explain what they thought was going on. And more likely what it was is that there was an upper pool, a lower pool, and the attendants would open a passage and water would flow down to the lower pool. That's a possibility. Maybe there was something supernatural with an angel there. We don't have any problem with that per se, but it is not in the earliest manuscripts, and so I mentioned that to you. Okay, so he says, when it's time to get in the pool, someone else gets in ahead of me, and I can't walk, and I don't benefit from the pool. Now, then Yeshua said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once, the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. Can you imagine how this guy felt? Can you enter into this? 30 years he'd been laying there. 30 years, not a hope of ever working, maybe never getting married, because would the girl want to marry him? Not much in the way of hopes and dreams for this guy, but just coming every day and maybe complaining to other people who were there. "Oh, you think you're sick? You should see what I got." That kind of atmosphere, perhaps we're imagining. But here Yeshua says, "Get up and walk." And all of a sudden, I imagine he feels a tingling sensation in his body, and it starts to tingle all the way down to his feet and his toes. And he can move them for the first time. First is he just moves his feet and then flexes some muscles. And then, maybe like if you've ever seen the birth of a fawn, it's kind of like insecure at first and unstable. And he's insecure. He hadn't used these muscles because they didn't work. All of a sudden, he gets up. He's walking like you and me. Wow. And Yeshua says to him, "Take your mat. You're good." What a great moment. What a wonderful moment. But the man, okay, where are we here? So the day on which this took place was the Shabbat, and now we have, again, this antagonism with some of the religious leaders in Jerusalem who, the Judean leaders said to the man who had been healed, "It's the Shabbat. The law forbids you to carry your mat." Now, this is a common problem with serious religious people like us, or any of them. Sometimes you can strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. What do I mean? You can miss the big picture of what's going on because you focus on a detail which may be, in its context, important, not unreasonable to think about. I mean, what's the right way to keep Shabbat? It's a reasonable question. But in this particular case, and in light of a Jewish value which I think we would appeal to, pikuach nefesh, saving a life, and I think that's applicable here, that these people were not focusing on the main issue. But he replied, "The man who made him well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.' So they asked him, 'Who is this fellow who told you to pick up your mat and walk?' The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Yeshua had slipped away into the crowd that was there." Don't forget, all this happened very quickly, and there's a lot of hustle and bustle. And all of a sudden he's better, and Yeshua just walked away, and that was it. Then the man, later, Yeshua found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." Which begs the question, what was the sin, right? What could be the sin? Well, it could be stop seeking healing at pagan shrines. There were lots of pagan buildings in Jerusalem at the time. By the way, that's why, if you're familiar a little bit with the Essene community and the Qumran community, they didn't want to have anything to do with the religious life in Jerusalem because they felt it was so corrupted because of the pagan influence that had crept in. So this whole supposition of this being the sin is not totally without warrant. So he says, "Stop sinning." Now maybe it was something else. Maybe he had been doing something else. "Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." Good exhortation for us too. The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Yeshua who had made him well. Now, okay, so here we are, and you never heard of this guy before. What do you think of him? And I'm going to ask you the question. What do you think of Yeshua? You never heard of him before. What have you learned about him so far? Any takers? Anyone want to suggest something? You want to meet him, but why do you want to meet him? Huh? I missed it. Why he's doing it? Okay, good. That's great. What else? What else do you make of him? You never heard of him before. What do you make of him? Well, some people, we know that some people did say that, but we read it, and we're not being so skeptical. We're reading it, and there it is. So, what do you think of this Yeshua? What do you think of this Yeshua? Say it again louder, Marty. He's got some amazing powers. Okay, good. Anything else? Yes. Ah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're on the right track. So obviously he's very powerful. You'd want to meet him. And what's the third thing? He's really good. He's really good. He has all this power, and yet he's willing even to go to a pagan shrine, right? And risk his reputation, perhaps, to a degree. But he's willing to go there to reach out to this one guy who is so needy, had been sick for all these years. Would you describe him as good? Yes or no? Yes. You describe him as very good. And had we continued reading the book with we Ugites, had we continued to read the book, we would have found more examples not only of his kindness, his power, but ultimately we would find his incredible moral acuity, his ability to get to the hearts of issues, his perception of human nature, which is so acute and so profound, and we would have found his love, expressed by his own self-sacrifice, for reasons maybe as newcomers to this planet we might not understand entirely, but we knew that he gave himself. He was willing to not use his power and allow himself to be treated poorly for a redemptive purpose. Now, what does this all have to do with this moment that we're in between Thanksgiving and Hanukkah? Well, I think what it has to do is there are lots of things to be thankful for. I hope we as a community can be very, very thankful for Yeshua. He's that good. And this is not Baba Meiser, and this is not made-up stories. Nobody could have made up this guy, and that's another whole story for another sermon. No one could make up this guy. The combination of power, vulnerability, empathy, incredible psychological savvy, and self-sacrifice, all underscored by the fact that we have people talking about things that they really saw and which they responded to the way normal people would respond had they seen these things. All of this adds to a unique guy, a true unique guy, and he's really great. So, Thanksgiving. Well, I hope you're thankful for lots of things. All you have to do is think about it a little bit, and we are among the most blessed people anywhere through human history. Forget about it, how blessed we are. I mean, was there food on the table this morning? Need I say more? There's lots to be thankful for. But Yeshua, I think, should loom very large in the hierarchy of things that we're thankful for, you know. And I want to encourage us to say thankful, stay thankful. And as Hanukkah comes, when kids think about presents, and Marty kind of discussed that today, and we can be lost in all of the glitter, if you will, of Hanukkah and then the celebration of Yeshua's birth. Let's really focus on the main thing, how fabulous this unique person is and how privileged we are as a Jewish community to embrace him. I leave you with that thought on this Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.